It's maybe the greatest ghost ship story in all of maritime history. A perfectly good ship found sailing all by itself in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, its entire crew just gone, vanished without a trace. So let's dive right into the incredible, enduring mystery of the Mary Celeste.
Okay, picture this. You're in the cold, choppy waters of the Atlantic, about 400 miles east of the Azores. It's 1872. The crew of a Canadian ship, the Dei Gratia, is just going about its business when they spot something. Well, something unsettling on the horizon. Those are the actual words of David Morehouse, the captain of the Dei Gratia. He saw this other ship, and it was sailing erratically, its sails were all messed up, and it was just eerily silent. He hailed it, signaled it, nothing. So he sends a few of his own guys over to check it out. And what they found? Well, that became the stuff of legend. So when the sailors from the Dei Gratia climbed aboard this mysterious ship, they found a scene that was just bizarre. It was both totally normal and deeply disturbing at the same time. It was like a vessel frozen in a moment, but with all the people just erased from the picture. But the facts just created this web of contradictions. The entire crew, gone. The only lifeboat, also gone. But the ship itself was basically fine. Yeah, a little water in the hold, but totally seaworthy. Their personal belongings, their money, their valuables, all untouched. There were 6 months' worth of food and water, and the last log entry was from 9 days earlier, hundreds of miles away. It just made no sense. Why would an experienced crew abandon a perfectly good ship? To even begin to understand this mystery, you have to understand the people who disappeared. This wasn't just a ship. It was a home for 10 people, and their story is absolutely central to this entire puzzle. Captain Benjamin Briggs was no novice. This guy was a pro. He was highly respected, a deeply religious man traveling with his wife and his 2-year-old daughter. He'd handpicked his crew, and in letters he sent home, he said he was totally happy with them, calling them capable and peaceable. So this was not a ship that was ready to explode into mutiny or chaos.
Right, so this gap in time is the crucial thing. The ship leaves New York on November 7th. The last log entry is on the morning of November 25th, just a routine position update. Then, 9 days later, it's found completely empty. What on earth could have happened in those 9 days? Now, before we get to the really plausible theories, we have to strip away more than a century of pure fiction. The story of the Mary Celeste has been so sensationalized that the myths often completely overshadow the actual facts. So get this. 12 years after it happened, a young Arthur Conan Doyle, yes, the guy who created Sherlock Holmes, wrote a short story about it. It was a thrilling, totally fictional account with a vengeful ex-slave and a super dramatic ending. The story was a huge hit, and it basically blurred the lines between what was real and what was made up forever. And this just shows you the power of a good story, right? People today still talk about warm meals being left on the table, a detail straight out of Conan Doyle's imagination. The reality was much cleaner, much tidier, and honestly, way more baffling. Even the name most people know, the Marie Celeste, is the fictional spelling. The real ship was and always will be the Mary Celeste. So when the Dei Gratia towed the Mary Celeste into Gibraltar, the first thought wasn't mystery, it was crime. The salvage hearings that followed were pushed forward by a man who was absolutely convinced he was looking at a case of foul play. Frederick Solly Flood was the man in charge, and from day one, he was certain a brutal crime had happened. His theory was that the crew had broken into the alcohol cargo, murdered Captain Briggs and his family in a drunken rage, and then took off. So Solly Flood's court was looking at a few grim possibilities. Mutiny was his favorite theory, but piracy was also considered, and so were suspicions against the very men who found the ship, Captain Morehouse and his crew. I mean, could they have attacked the Mary Celeste just to claim the reward money?
But here's the thing. The evidence just didn't fit. Not at all. Pirates would have looted the ship, but valuables were left behind. Mutineers, high on alcohol, probably wouldn't have neatly put away all the kitchen gear. And that cargo of industrial alcohol, almost all of it was still there. The crime scene just didn't look like a crime scene. And this was the final blow to Solly Flood's whole case. He found some marks on the ship's railing and a sword that he swore were covered in blood. Well, they were tested. The results? Not blood. Other marks on the bow that looked like they were from an axe were just written off as normal wear and tear from the sea. There was zero physical evidence of violence,
and Flood had to, very reluctantly, release the ship. So with foul play pretty much off the table, investigators and historians have turned to science. And the most convincing explanation lies right where Solly Flood first looked, but for a totally different reason. That cargo. The ship was carrying over 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol. When they inspected the cargo, 9 of those barrels were empty. Now here's what's fascinating. Those 9 specific barrels were made of red oak, which is way more porous than the white oak they used for all the others. And that meant they were way more likely to leak. So the leading theory today isn't that the crew drank the alcohol, but that they were terrified by it. The leaking barrels could have filled the cargo hold with super flammable fumes, creating what was basically a floating time bomb. Okay, so here's how it most likely went down. Fumes leak out and build up in the hold. Something creates a spark, maybe just some metal tools rubbing together, and it ignites the vapor. This causes a really dramatic but contained blast. Not a fire, but a powerful pressure wave that could have easily blown the heavy hatch covers right off their mountings. Faced with that terrifying event, and probably thinking the entire ship is about to go up in a giant fireball, Captain Briggs makes a split-second, fateful decision. Get everybody off the ship just for a little while. And listen, this isn't just speculation. This invisible explosion is a known phenomenon. Back in 2006, an experiment at University College London actually recreated the conditions in a scale model of the ship's hold, and they created a pressure wave explosion that was dramatic and loud, but left no scorch marks and did no structural damage, which is exactly what they found on the Mary Celeste. So this theory explains why they left the ship. It makes perfect sense. But it doesn't explain what happened to them next. And the final piece of this puzzle is as tragic as it is simple. The plan was probably simple. Get into the lifeboat, tie a long rope to the ship, and just hang back to see if it explodes. But in the choppy Atlantic, that rope could have easily snapped. And then suddenly, they'd be adrift in a tiny boat, just watching their perfectly good ship sail away without them. In the middle of the open ocean, their chances of survival would have been pretty much zero. The ship, on the other hand, had a much less mysterious fate. It sailed for another 13 years under different owners, but her reputation was, forever haunted. Her end finally came in 1885, when her last captain deliberately ran her onto a reef off the coast of Haiti in a failed attempt at insurance fraud. A cursed ship, right to the very end. So, we have a logical, scientific explanation for one of history's greatest maritime mysteries. But even with a plausible answer, the image of that empty ship sailing silently across the Atlantic, carrying the ghosts of 10 lost souls, it remains just as powerful as ever. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? When the facts replace the fantasy, does a mystery ever really go away?